Alright, baby. It's this old outboard. 1975 4-horse John Stone. And she got issues. Man, I was hoping for a day of a, hee day. She runs, she's beautiful. And that's why, because it's just such a beautiful little outboard. And it just looked like one of those deals you just, clean it up, throw it back together, and should be good to go. Well, that's not the case. Speaking of the case, we'll get to that. Anyway, darlings, look how, all these gaskets are in great shape. Like I said, somebody's been in here, did the work, but they screwed up. One, they screwed up. The water tube grommet down in the pump is too big. The water tube is like tiny. And when I pulled it off to check the impeller, I'm like, man, that's too big. Is it gonna work? But I know from testing water pumps, you put the gear case in a bucket, you put the drill on the drive shaft, and you hit it. If that water's only shooting up like this high, it's time for a new impeller. But if it's shooting this high, you should be good to go. So I figured, well, it's probably going to shoot up in there, and the water tube is cut into 45 sharp, should get down in there. Well, I don't think that was happening, because this thing was getting hot too fast. After that day, later that day I should say, the last video day, Corey came over and I was explaining to him everything, and he wanted to start it and everything, so we started it up, and I'm like, man, she's just getting too hot too fast. So that's one issue, and I'm sure they did the same thing, ran it that way. The other issue, I'm getting compression on the top side, but I don't think I'm getting compression on the inside, if that makes sense to you. So the very last thing I did was I took the carburetor off again. You could start this thing with the drill, but after it was juiced up, then you could pull start it, but it wouldn't be, it should have started, even though I kept forgetting to pull the throttle handle up and stuff, that was just stupid stuff on my part, because I was excited. I'll tell you, I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was gonna be perfect. Start it with the pull start, because it's really, just the same with the compression. Hand pulling it, I'm getting 80, 85, put the drill on it, do the compression test, it goes up a few pounds because it's spinning so fast. So that's what was happening. With it spinning that fast, it was able to pull the fuel out of the carb. Everything get juiced up, it would start. Then it would die. Or I'd cut it off because it was getting hot. So back to me taking the carb off, blew it all out, everything was clean, a little worried something could have come loose and stuck in there, da-da-da-da-da. Blew it all out, put it back on here, came out the next morning, said this thing, this is, we'll see what's happening. Put the choke on, and I'm pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling. Bought the new plugs for it, pulled them out, bone dry. The carburetor, bone dry. Not one drop of gas was getting pulled out of that carb. The throat was bone dry. So this is the head, and this is the piece that came off at the bottom. So I took that off, and I'm looking in there at the pistons, the cylinders, and I'm seeing a lot of discoloration, and I'm like, oh great. If you hold your hand over the cylinder and you pump the flywheel back and forth, you can feel it on your hand. Suck, push, suck, push, suck, push, So the top end's got compression, but inside nothing is happening. But you see all this dark discoloration, then it goes farther back. It almost looks like it's pitted. Then on the top, same thing around the bottom. Is that from water? What is that? You know, what is it from? There's not really lines that you would normally see. You can see a few, nothing deep, nothing horrible. So the question was, can this be honed out and you know, get the compression up a little bit and figure out why I'm not getting compression inside the motor. Nothing is pulling that fuel out. So what ultimately happened was, get online, look up parts. So if I hone it out, I got to get some new rings. See all this darkness at the top here doesn't affect the rings. See how dark it is up here? It just looks kind of pitted. And then you can see it, you know, a little bit up in the top here. Nothing bad like it is around the edges. It's a little bit over here on this side. I can feel it too. See my fingernail just scraping along it? So back to what's going on. Get online, start looking up parts. I'm like, so the biggest problem is you can't get, there's, you know, unavailable parts. I found one set of rings on eBay. And I said, well, let's see what there is in an oversized piston. Found 2 kits on eBay, 1 piston in each kit. An oversized piston with the ring kit. Then you have to find a machine shop that knows what they're doing and how to do it and all that crap. And then it starts adding up, right? For those 2 kits, you're probably looking at $150 with shipping and everything. Tax and, you know, the whole 9 yards. So then I'm talking to Captain Ron, explaining all of this to him. And he says, oh, well, the same thing happened to me. He said it was the upper seal. And I said, well, I've never had any of this off, but there was no indication of anything leaking. If you look in the hood, usually you get the black ring around here because it's throwing oil. So I just didn't believe that was the case, but now that I look, I can see, I don't know if it's just from them, you know, whoever had this before, spraying crap on there for lube. So what I would normally do in a situation is use a little bit of WD-40 and spray it in there on the seal. And while I'm working on the motor and doing it, I let it soak. And if the WD-40 runs in, that means the seal is bad. Or you can spin the flywheel around. If you see any bubbles, that means it's bad. Captain Ron uses soapy water. Same principle. So I never did that on this thing. So I have no clue if it's good or bad, or, you know, I don't care if I use WD or soapy water or what. Talking to Captain Ron, I'm like, you know, and I said, what about the blower seal, crankshaft seal? So I went and looked it up on the schematic. And you're not going to believe me, and it's the God's honest truth though, they showed no schematic, no bearing on there. I'm like, well, how in the hell does this thing work without a bearing and a, you know, a seal? And then that brought me back to thinking, why was the water pump full of greasy, oily mess? I'm like, you know, what's the deal? I mean, I looked at every friggin' schematic on the planet, and you couldn't find the seal in any one of those schematics. But to make Captain Ron happy, I'll mix up a little soapy water and we'll give it a quick test. Anyway, I poured some soapy water in there. put the nut on, spun the thing around. I didn't see any air bubbles, nothing was happening to indicate any kind of leak on this seal. I let it sit for a little while, spun it around. I can pour the rest of this in there and see. Do it again. See, there's bubbles in that right there from just sitting in that glass. But just to make Captain Ron happy, see, nothing's coming up, nothing's showing. The level is staying the same. You know, we'll let it sit in there. We'll see if it drains down any. I don't think it's going to. Also, just a quick mention, when they took the reed valves off and replaced the gaskets, you can see on this side, they didn't even bother taking the entire gasket off. You know? Look at all this crap that's still left on there. Stupid. I mean, look here, this is falling right off. Another new gasket. Look at all this leaking. Yuck. That ain't good. Plus, I was going to mention the bottom two, loose. They just, man, just fell right out. It looks like they had a little bit of gasket crap on there, which is probably not needed for this. But first of all, let me see where this camera's looking so everybody gets a peek. Alright, so spin this. Now see, both of these pistons are solid. I don't see any big hole cut out. So that piston kit that one guy has must not be right. And they don't look bad. There's a few little lines in there, little average, you know, nothing. The rings look pretty good. That bottom ring on the bottom one there looks a little tight. Let's see. Come over here and poke it. Yeah, it's fine. Look, it's springing. That one's fine. That one's fine. Now, is it possible? Hold on. Yeah, that one's fine. But is it possible? These two look the same. Let me see the top again. Those look different. They don't look as wide. Is it my imagination, or they look like they're not quite the same size? They just don't look like they're filling. You know, they just look like there's some space in there. Let's roll these other ones back up. See how tight those look? What's up with that? Huh, look how skinny those look. Now, if they're mixed up or something, I don't think they'll fit. You know, isn't one usually a little bit angled or something, a little funky different about it? I mean, that's a difference. I don't care what anybody says. Look at how tight those look in the grooves. And look at those. They look too skinny. Huh. So I guess the only other thing to do at this point, there's still sudsy water in here, so I don't think that seal is a problem. But I'm going to pull the friggin' thing out and see what's going on with the bottom and why there's no seal and how this thing is even, how can it run with just, I guess it's so small it doesn't really need a bearing at the bottom of the crankshaft. So I grab a wrench and I go to, you know, turn this out, and it's like loose. And I'm like, man. Then I look up in here, I go, that's not even the right screw to get the power head out anyway. See what this one's like. A little loose. So this thing is actually put in with screws. They're up here. So that might be fun, right? Frickin' screws. Same thing with the two halves, or screws. Pain in the butt. So I just took the first one out. It just dropped right out. Then you can tell on these screws, they've been out before. Yeah, see that top of that screw slot? It's been in and out a few times. Alright, they're out. They just fell right out. I love when these damn bolts and stuff just fall right out. I don't want to be fighting crap. There's that skinny little water tube I'm talking about. It's wet. Yep, there it is, the bottom of the crankshaft, and it's got grooves in it for the drive shaft to fit in. So get these screws out and pull that power head off. Muffler. Well, that motor should fall right out. Like that. See all the red crap? Like I said, not the first one to be in here. Same. Lock tight. See, this isn't my motor, so figure out what's in Corey's budget. You know, if it can be saved, we'll save it. If not, see what he wants to do. So, yeah, I mean, there's no seal here. That's for sure. Drive shaft just goes right in there. But there's not showing, ooh, I don't want to mess this gasket up. Please, just, there you go. Thank you, darling. Hold on, let me put this in a safe place. I hate to say it, did this red stuff even work? Again, I don't even know if you even need it, the gasket. It's not metal to metal, you know what I mean? Alright, so the only thing left to do is to crack this thing open at this point. I mean, could I be leaking here? I mean, what's going on with this thing? Why isn't it getting any vacuum inside? That was easy. Easy breezy. Yeah, you see here? A little bit of sealer on there. But look, this is all wet down here. Leaking right through. Is that where the problem lies? Look at this. Is that where I'm losing vacuum? Am I in this freaking shot? Sorry, I'm looking at this and not the viewfinder. Anyway, a real thin layer of this pinkish color sealer. But all down at the bottom, look, just nothing leaking right through. Is that the problem? I don't have a good seal on this thing. So far, this is the most suspect. Well, even these screws have been out. Both sides. You can tell by looking at them, a little beat up. So we got some weird stuff going on here. There's almost a groove there, you know, more in this thing. And a little bit of pitting on here. So only one bearing for this thing? Wow. And no seal at all. Yeah, you see all this peeling off. That was, you know, down here was all greasy, not sealed up, all wet. I'm going to imagine too all the work that they've done, that this top seal is new. Well, I can see too, there's marks on here from the little nipple where they didn't have it on right and went to tighten it down, had to take it off. See the little round marks. And then the thing itself is, it's all smashed around the top here. You almost need a magnifying glass to really see it. But maybe you can see on here, I hold this up here. See the top of that nipple thing sticking out? It's beat up from being in the wrong position. This thing cranked back down. And when that happens, you won't be able to turn the crankshaft. I gotta get a baggie for this real quick before I drop one. So, you're probably not gonna be able to see this until all this comes out. Right in there, boy, there's 2 or 3 marks where they had that damn thing in the wrong position. That's what I was going nuts on with the 20, trying to get all those things plugged in properly. And then this crap here, I don't know what to do with this. It almost kind of looks kind of like, see those black, I can feel them with my finger. I don't know. I mean, it looks like I almost picked some of it off. And you know, that probably happened when they cranked this thing down. It was in there half-ass, and then they tried to maybe even start it, and it burned it up, created those grooves. This side is fine, this side is not. And that's because this thing was in there and this thing was sitting too high on this end. So I don't know. I imagine you can get away with it on this little tiny motor. I don't know. We'll find out, I guess. So let's take this out. Now we get a good look. Yeah, there's that piston's fine. Now we can get a good look in there, and they look fine. Maybe a little deglazing. Can I go with the same rings? All this stuff will clean all these parts up and everything. Show everything to Corey. See what he wants to do. I know he doesn't mind spending a little bit of money on it. And we'll find out. Then I gotta start tearing this thing down again, get it put back together properly, all the new gaskets, but right now there's nothing left for me to do with this 4-horse but start cleaning up all the stuff. figure out just what, if, and how everything's gonna go.
Oh yeah, baby.